Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. So in case you missed the message this morning, we had a speaker who couldn't make it. So my session is now going to be 2 hours, and we'll do a break in between. The first part, we're going to watch a video, and then a lot of what we're going to do is we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a lot of group discussion because I think it challenges the way we have thought about and done adoptions for a really long time. So if you've got something you'd rather do during the 3 o'clock, go for it. You know, you don't have to stay for both sessions, but I appreciate you being here. I think this is going to be a really interesting discussion. So we're going to do a Mythbusters session. My name is Courtney Protz-Sanders. I run Paws for Life Animal Rescue out of Troy, and I'm part of Michigan's Political Action Committee for Animals, and both of my organizations are huge supporters of Make Michigan Next. Visit their table if you don't know about it, but we're having a huge rally in Lansing in a couple of weeks, and we're educating our policymakers about breed discrimination as well as the dangers of large-scale puppy mills operating in our state. So I have a question for everyone. Did anybody here attend the HSUS Expo this past May in Daytona Beach? Perfect. Did anybody see the Mythbusters presentation that came out of Expo? It's been floating around online. Vicky's seen it. You're going to see it again. So who here is directly involved in adoptions, whether it's shelter or rescue or you do your own thing, but you're screening or you're placing animals? Hold them up high. I really want to get a percentage. Perfect, because you guys are the ones who are really going to have a takeaway today. And I really want to know who I'm talking to. So if you are with a foster-based animal rescue, whether you're a volunteer or you're paid, throw your hands up there real big. Okay, how many are with a shelter? So you've got a facility, whether it's a humane society. Okay. Come on in and find a seat. So I was asked, I kind of covered this a minute ago, but I'll let you guys know again. So originally this was about the rescue certification program and our code of ethics. I'm still going to cover that information. It's probably just going to be in that second half. However, I'm here all of conference, so if there's something you really wanted to go do at 3 o'clock and you can't stay, but you want the certification information, you can come find me, or really any volunteer you see who's wearing a badge on a ribbon on their badge that says rescue certification or rescue certified. Michigan Certified Rescue, that's what it says. So we will cover that, but we'll do it in the second half. Okay, so we covered who is with foster-based rescues, who's with shelters. Do we have any elected officials in the room? Any politicians? Okay, and animal control officers. Fabulous, great. So I told you a little bit about myself. My career started on the animal shelter side. I worked at a very large open admission shelter. We took in 75 animals a day on average. It's about 25,000 a year. That was out in Denver, Colorado, and I moved back to Michigan. This is my home state. And I started volunteering for various groups. I just couldn't find that right fit for me, and so I ended up starting a rescue in 2007, and that's Paws for Life. And ever since, I've been working with all kinds of different groups. So I've experienced the shelter world and the rescue world, and I really encourage everybody to try and get a flavor of both. I think it will help you develop a better understanding for how that other side operates or has to operate. And what did you guys think of Nathan Winograd's session? It's inspiring, right? And that's the other thing I want to mention. Thank you for being here. It's for most of us a weekday, a work day. We took time out of our lives to be here, and that is so encouraging to me because I believe very strongly that the more we all know, the more we can do and accomplish. And just like every other industry, things are always changing, improving. There are more things that we can learn, ways we can do things differently. And if we don't keep up with that, the animals are the only ones that fail or suffer. So thank you for being here and taking the time. I think this is great. So, the rules. Only 2 things I ask of you for this session is I want you to be completely honest and I want you to have an open mind. Because some of the things we're going to talk about or that you're going to see on this video are very contrary to what we're used to doing when it comes to adoptions. So, I just want you to be open-minded. During the video, there's a small interactive piece where when she's talking to the audience, she asks everyone to stand up. I want all of us to play along with her because it really helps make a point. I'm going to play along as well. And this is another part where we've got to be completely honest. Okay, so even Cheese has a good point. There are portions of the video that some of us may think are slightly cheesy. That's okay. It illustrates the point really well, so just bear with it.
Tennis, hike, and go biking. He worked for Truck Stops of America for 7 years and drives a blue and white hatchback, affectionately known as the Smurf car. If he were a fruit, it would be a star fruit because it looks interesting, but you're not quite sure what to do with it. Contestant number 2. Contestant number 2 is a jigsaw enthusiast who has an uncanny ability to assemble them quickly. She loves watermelon and red wine and is not a morning person. In fact, she can't understand how anyone could be perky before having coffee. And contestant number 3. This avid runner and kayaker loves to garden and is a fan of unwinding at the end of the day with a book and a glass of wine. She is a self-proclaimed geek and a horrible dancer and singer, but she does them with enthusiasm anyway. Now, please welcome your host, Anna Adoptions, and Sassy, the dog who is looking for the perfect forever home.
By now, you've gotten a chance to probably meet Sassy, and I think we all agree we want a perfect home for a dog who is such an amazing dancer. So I'm going to be asking some questions of our contestants just to make sure that they are worthy of this dog. So let's get started with contestant number 1. Contestant number 1, have you ever been turned down for adoption anywhere else?
Yes, I have.
Oh, and why did they turn you down?
Well, I wanted to ask some questions before I answered all the questions, and they said if I wasn't willing to complete the 5-page application that I didn't want the dog enough.
Well, this is starting off well. All right, contestant number 2. Do you travel a lot?
Oh, actually, yes. I travel quite a bit for work.
Huh, I see. Do you have a pet sitter or a dog walker?
I actually don't think I need a pet sitter or a dog walker. No.
Okay. Contestant number 3. This dog has already demonstrated that she will need some training. Yes. Are you willing to pay for and attend training classes so that this dog will fit into your home?
I really don't think I need to pay for training classes.
Okay, no interest in responsible training. Okay, back to contestant number 1. Have you ever surrendered a pet?
Yes, several.
Okay then, back to contestant number 2. Do you have a fenced yard?
Actually, no, I don't, because I have these wonderful woods, and I think Sassy would really love to go exploring my woods.
And I bet our officers will love chasing her through those woods. All right, contestant number 3. Are your pets' vaccinations up to date?
I'm not really sure why that's relevant. Sassy's vaccinations are up to date, aren't they?
We're asking about your current pets.
No, I don't think they're up to date.
All right, contestant number 1. Does anyone in your household smoke?
What? Why does Sassy prefer a particular brand?
Okay, person is a smarty pants. All right, contestant number 2. Have you ever kept cats outdoors?
Yes, actually, I have a lot of cats outdoors. I just love cats.
This is not going well. Contestant number 3. Can we visit your home to make sure that you're going to provide an appropriate environment for this animal?
Visit my home? I barely let my friends visit my home.
Okay, I'm sorry, Sassy. This is really not going as I planned. None of these people have the right answers, and I don't think any of them really deserve you. We want to find a perfect home for you, so I'm afraid we're going to have to wait a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sassy. Let's see who the rejects are. Contestant number 1, Todd Kramer, Senior Program Manager, Adoptions at PetSmart Charities. And contestant number 2, Betsy McFarland, Vice President, Companion Animals, HSUS. And contestant number 3, Emily Weiss, Vice President of Shelter Research and Development at the ASPCA.
All right, folks. So in the real world, my name is not Anna Adoptions. I'm Carrie Allen. I'm the editor of Animal Sheltering Magazine. And while we've pulled the wool over your eyes a little bit here and presented this as a game show, we want you to know that all of the questions I asked actually came from real adoption applications. And that the answers these speakers provided were honest and true answers. But because of these questions, because I treated the process more like a checklist of right and wrong, more like an interrogation than a conversation, I have just turned down 3 leaders of the animal welfare movement. If I had taken a little more time with these folks, some time to explore what was behind some of their answers, I would have found out that some of the responses that seemed to be a problem might not be. For example, Betsy McFarland's outdoor cats are actually a community of feral cats that she TNR'd, that she just refers to as her outside cats. And her dog is always on a leash when they walk through her natural woods. Emily Weiss doesn't think she needs a behavior trainer because she's a behavioral PhD. And those animals that Todd Kramer surrendered were actually surrendered on behalf of a client when he worked for a residential rehabilitation program helping folks with disabilities. But I wasn't going to find any of that information out because I was sure, based on my checklist, that none of these people were really good options. Of course, we know that not everyone coming to you to adopt is going to be an Emily Weiss. But our point here is that most of the folks who come to you wanting to adopt are there because they want to do a good thing. And we encourage you to think about a time when you yourself may have been the victim of a misjudgment, when somebody heard something that you said or took a look at you and made a judgment that just got it completely wrong and got you completely wrong. It's always a painful experience, but in our field, those misjudgments can sometimes cost animals really great homes. During this session today, these 3 wonderful speakers, who each have decades of experience in this field, and I think who we would agree would probably make stellar adopters in spite of their answers to our questions, are going to take us on a journey to challenge our thinking about how we handle adoption processes, how we may be inadvertently alienating people, or even missing great potential markets for adoption. So please, open your hearts and minds, and let's really take a hard look at how we do things, and at how maybe some of our tried and true approaches really aren't the best after all, and how we may find hundreds of more great homes by meeting people where they are and acting as supporters rather than as interrogators. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily Weiss.
Okay, I really wanted Sassy, so I can't believe it. Hi, you guys. How are you? So I want to take a little time to talk to you about 2 things today. And the 2 things are going to be how we are different or not different than the people who walk in our door. And then I want to share with you some research that we have around maybe some things that you thought were facts that maybe really aren't, and might open up the door for more animals to get homes. So this is my dog, C. I couldn't believe I was going to have this opportunity to have C on the big screen at Expo. So those who know me and know my workshops, this is a big moment for both C and I. So we often talk about the people who walk in to our shelter as them. We're us, they're them. And I want to challenge that a little bit as to whether we're so different than they are. So I'm going to tell you a little story. Back when I was in college, it was actually my second try at college, I had gotten a little bungalow, and I wanted to get a dog. So I learned about my local shelter, and I learned about their policies and how you went through the adoption process. They actually had quite a reputation. So I came prepared to the shelter. And I saw this dog as I was walking around. He was about 3.5-year-old chow mix, a crooked tooth sticking out of his mouth, intact, big guy, and I fell in love. And so I met with the adoption counselor, and she asked me some questions. She asked me about my fenced-in yard, and I took out a picture of my fenced-in yard. Not my fence. Not my house. She asked if my landlord allowed pets. I said, sure, give her a call. She'd be happy to talk to you. Not my landlord. So 45 minutes later, they allowed me to adopt Benny, and Betty came home with me. It's a picture of Benny, picture of me, and long time ago. Benny was posing for the Proper Pooch, was a business that I had when I was in graduate school. And Benny was amazing. You guys know that dog or cat that is it, you know, the one. Benny was the one for me. He went everywhere with me. He was just the most amazing dog. And he wasn't perfect. He actually, when I first got him, he would attack anybody over 5'10". Seriously. And he had horrible, horrible thunderstorm phobia and would go through plate glass windows. It was pretty horrific. But he was an amazing dog. And so he went through life with me. He went with me through my graduate program. He moved with me. He went through lots of boyfriends with me. And then finally, Benny had gotten old. And it was time to say goodbye. And I was really lucky that I was able to have a vet, who's a friend, to come to my house to do that. I promised myself I wasn't going to cry. So he was on my lap, head on my lap. And I looked down at him, and he looked up at me. And I thought back to that day when I adopted Benny and thought, wow, if I had told them the truth, he would never have been in my life. And instead of dying here in my lap 14 years later or 15 years later, he would have been in that shelter. Because let's face it, he was an intact male chow mix in the Hamptons. He probably didn't have much of a chance. And it was at that moment that I thought, I'm not us, I'm them. And you're them. And until we accept them for who they are and allow these animals into their homes, Benny changed me. Then we're stuck, you guys. It's time to open up our hearts and open up the doors to our shelters to these people who aren't perfect, because you know what? You're not either. There's probably a whole bunch of you out there that are just like Betsy and Todd and I, that maybe your vaccinations aren't up to date. Maybe some of you snuck a pet in to a rental unit that didn't allow pets. Yeah? So we're them. And the other thing that happens when we do this is, you know what, I'm not the only one who has brought in a picture that wasn't my fence. We cut off these relationships. So Benny, I told you, he jumped through plate glass windows, right? because they had thunderstorm phobia. I was a college student. What do I know? I had to go to school, and I didn't want Benny to run away. So I actually tied him up outside a couple of times when I knew a storm was coming where he had protection, so I didn't know what else to do. And if the shelter was my resource, if they were my friend as opposed to the place where I would go to get a dog, steal a dog from them, they would have been able to tell me. Right? So by accepting folks for not being perfect, by accepting folks for maybe not knowing, we can really save a whole lot more lives. So I'm not alone, both in this arena and at the ASPCA. Many of us have had these experiences. And so at the ASPCA, we've spent a lot of time developing and working on research and programming to kind of bust that myth and push past that barrier that's making us feel like somehow we're in control and somehow this pet will be better off if only I can make sure that their landlord knows that the pet is coming. So we've developed some programs. We developed a program called Meet Your Match. That's a whole program just designed to help let go of those barriers and just have a conversation with adopters that walk in the door. We did some research around landlord checks. Well, what actually happens when you drop landlord checks? Is there really much more of a risk to the dog or cat? No. We developed a program called Adoption Ambassadors, or research program called Adoption Ambassadors to help volunteers be the ones to do the adoptions for us. And boy, they do a better job than we do. And then we did some research on a program that you might have heard about. Free cats! Whoa! Give them away! So it sounds like some of you have done free cats. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about free cat adoptions, but boy, you guys have now saved hundreds of thousands of cats by simply recognizing people don't normally pay for cats. That's not where they're getting them from. So if we just eliminate the adoption fees, instead of having folks find free cats that are not spayed or not neutered or not vaccinated on the street and not spay them or neuter them or vaccinate them, they can come to our shelter, we can make a connection, and they can get a free cat from us. And now we have a person for life. Pretty cool. Do me a favor, because there's probably some folks in the room who are like, free cats, you've got to be kidding me. So raise your hands if you've done free cat adoptions. And those of you who haven't, look at the people who have, and take a minute to talk to them about it. So one of the neatest thing that we learned about researching free cat adoptions is that there's no difference in the bond. Whether you pay an adoption fee or you get the cat for free, you still love your cat. And again, I ask you to look at yourselves. Chances are, most of you never paid for a cat, and you probably love them a lot. So then we decided, well, let's really hit the danger zone. Let's talk about pets as gifts. So you might have heard, this is what the experts say about pets as gifts. I know this is hard to read, but it's not a good idea, they tell us. Don't ever give a pet as a gift, because they won't value them. They're going to be much more likely to come into the shelter. People won't keep them. It's a really bad idea. If they don't go through a whole big thought process and make that match themselves, we're doomed. Well, actually, that's not true. And there's been data around for a long time that has told us, I don't think that is really true. So Dr. New and some of his colleagues found that dogs obtained as gifts are less likely to be relinquished than dogs obtained from a shelter, from a friend, as a stray, or from a pet shop. And found the same exact thing for cats. There's also data that pets are rarely relinquished because they are an unwanted gift. And another study that found that pets obtained as gifts are actually significantly less at risk for relinquishment. But you notice the dates on these studies. So this is in the 90s, this is 2000. This has been around for a while, you guys, but still, when I went to shelters and talked to them about wild pets as gifts, whoa, I have some good hate mail about it. So we decided to do our own little study, and it really was a little study, just a survey. to see if maybe we could change some minds, because we were sick of seeing ads like this. If you can't read it, it says, "What are you returning this holiday season? Sweaters don't die when returned. Dogs are not gifts." So we decided to do some research, and this is what we found. This is just a simple survey. We asked folks a set of questions around obtaining a pet as a gift. And we asked them, this is a big survey, if they had obtained a gift in the past 10 years or so. Did getting that pet as a gift increase, decrease, or have no impact on their love or attachment for their pet? And you can see for 60% of the people, it increased. It increased their love or attachment. For only 3% did it decrease it. Seems pretty powerful to me. Were you involved in the selection process of getting that pet as a gift? In other words, was it a surprise or not? So 60%, again, of these folks, no, they weren't. It was a surprise, and they were okay with it. 30% did know that it was coming, but only 6% wished they were involved. Just 6%. So what we found, there's no significant relationship between receiving a dog or cat as a gift, whether it's a surprise or not. And how much they love or care or bonded to that animal. And no impact. We asked if the pet is still with them. So are they more or less likely than the regular Joe to still have the pet in their home? And what we found, 74% the pet was still in the home, 12% the pet had passed away, and just 13%, which is very similar for the data we have on pet retention overall, said the pet was no longer with them. So, whether or not they got that pet as a surprise, obtaining that pet as a gift had no impact on the pet living in the home. So I blogged about this. I have a blog on aspcapro.org. And when I blogged about this, wow, it was interesting what we got. I think my favorite one was somebody who wrote, "I don't believe data. I don't believe data because it can just say whatever it wants. I always believe what I think." I love that. I'm going to we decided in the R&D department we're going to get T-shirts that say that because I think it's great. But what about dogs and cats under the tree? So this is Elise, who works at ASPCA in the pro department. This is her daughter. I love this. I love that shot. But what about dogs or cats under the tree? I mean, gosh, Christmas, no. I mean, if you're ever going to give a pet as a gift, not at Christmas time, right? That's horrible. I don't know. I mean, I don't get a lot of vacation time, so probably the only week I am likely to be home is Christmas time. For many people, that's actually probably the best week you can possibly do. The family is home, they're not working, they have time to spend with the animal, they're in a good mood, they're celebratory anyway. It might be the perfect time. And to make the assumption for everybody it's a bad time because they're having big parties, not all of them are. And if they are, then that might be okay too. So some organizations have embraced the idea to an amazing level of pets as gifts on Christmas, to the point where they'll deliver them to you on Christmas Day! Woo! How cool is that? And these are growing. I mean, it was so neat to see last year that all of these dogs and cats going home on Christmas Day, volunteers spending their time Christmas morning sending these animals home. That is where we want to be, you guys. That is where we want to be. Because if they're not getting a pet as a gift from you when they want it at Christmas time, what do you think they're doing? They're getting a pet as a gift somewhere else. And again, that animal might not be spayed or neutered, might not be vaccinated. They certainly don't have a relationship with you anymore. Right? They're not coming to you, they're not going to support you, and you're not going to be able to support them. So what about removing policies just in general? So, we've looked at certain policies. What happens when we remove a landlord restriction, or maybe we don't have to call the vet to see if their vaccinations are up to date. And that was no lie, you guys. My vaccinations on my pets aren't up to date. And, probably if you were honest with yourself, maybe yours aren't either. And maybe it's okay to let go of that, because this pet has up-to-date vaccinations, and this one is spayed or neutered, so it doesn't matter so much if their one at home isn't right now, because if you have that relationship, maybe you can spay and neuter that one at home too. So what happens if we simply say, all right, we're going to change this from prove it to of course you can. Of course you can. Can we really make more adoptions, make better adoptions, and have these animals stay home? So we looked at, in one shelter, what happens when we follow adopters through policy-based adoptions, and then have that shelter move to what we call conversation-based adoptions, or open adoptions, where there are no policies. So that's what we did. It was at one shelter. We followed about 40 adopters in each group. And we found some interesting stuff. We found that there's no difference in the level of attachment between the two groups. We asked them questions 30 days post-adoption, after the animals were home. They asked them about their attachment level. Well, there's no difference whether somebody obtained their pet through a bunch of policies or they obtained their pet through open adoptions about their level of attachment to that pet. We asked them about where he sleeps. So they're just as likely to sleep in bed or sleep in the home or sleep on the couch through policy-based adoptions as they are in open adoptions or conversation-based adoptions. No difference. Oh, look at that picture. ID tags. No difference in the likelihood that he's going to wear an ID tag. No difference in the likelihood of going to the vet. And most of them went to the vet. Here's a big one. No difference in declaw. So they were no more or less likely to have their cat declawed whether you told them, no, you can't declaw, or you didn't. And resident dog issues. Of all of the policies that we talked about and we looked at removing, this seems to be the toughest. The idea that not requiring the resident dog to come in and meet the sheltered dog is met with incredible resistance in many organizations, hopefully not yours, but maybe so. And as a behaviorist, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Because how that resident dog behaves with the shelter dog in the shelter environment, in this random environment, actually has nothing to do with how he's likely to behave in the home. So unless we're talking about significant overt aggression, we're actually potentially setting these folks up for not being successful. Because we're telling them, yep, you're going to be fine. They go home, their resident dog growls because this is his bed. I think he has every right to growl. That is his bed. But we told him it's going to be just fine. So it takes an incredible amount of time. Think about this. So think about you're the adopter, you're coming to the shelter, you're so excited, you want to bring this new dog home. And you're told, no. I'm going to keep this dog in this cage so that another dog can't be in this cage. I can't save another life. I'm going to keep him in this cage until you can bring your dog in. I don't care how far away you live. If it needs to take you 2 days, we'll just put a hold on him and we'll wait for you to come back. What has that done? Now you have an animal in your shelter that was saved. You can't go home yet now. He's there for another 2 days while you wait for this person to come in who says, I'm fine. Listen, I've done dog intros 1 million times. This is going to be okay. And it makes no difference. So for us, this was a powerful one for us to see that just by simply removing that Many people will still take you up, so you can offer to do dog intros at your facility. Certainly we don't want somebody walking in the front door of their home with their new shelter dog and saying, good luck to you. We certainly want them to do it in a neutral place, so if they want to do it at our shelter, we'd be happy to do that for them. Great service. You can actually charge a fee for it, and that way, that space, at least you're getting some revenue to be able to support other dogs. And many organizations have done that with really good success. Then it becomes a service you can provide. Then you're shifting it from, I'm going to hold this dog here and you're going to prove it that you're good enough, to, hey, we're a resource, we're the experts, and look what we can show you. So this research for us is a powerful piece to be able to get at really letting go. So I gave you a lot of information in a short time. There are many places where a lot of these myths have been highlighted and discussed. So you can go to Animal Sheltering magazine. Just use it's great content and can really help guide you, and has some features of individual shelters who have gone through some of these programs and made these big changes. Maddie's is a great resource as well. And then, of course, I'm going to mention aspcapro.org. And there's a lot of not only the research, not only the data, but the step-by-step processes in order for you to help implement that in your organization. And blogs that make sense for your board members, for those who didn't walk in here today and hear this today, to help guide you through this process. In our last couple of minutes, if you can indulge me, can you just all stand up for me? All right. So I'm just going to say a few things. If one of these things is you, please sit down, okay? If you've ever had a pet in a rental unit that didn't allow pets, please sit down. It's hard to see the room, but I did see some heads go down. If you've ever had a pet get lost, even if you found him, if you ever had a pet get lost, please sit down. If you've ever been late on your vaccinations, please sit down. Okay, I can go on, and I can probably drop most of you. But just in that alone, look at you guys, this is it. You guys, I think you're all pretty good. I think there's a Benny in your future. So this has been an honor to be in front of this room. I mean, these are you all are people that I respect so highly, and I remember my first expo, and I was blown away, and I'm just as blown away now that I get to introduce Betsy McFarland.
So I want to dive in a little bit deeper on our markets for pet adoption. Who are the people we're looking for, and what are we doing with them? So I want to talk about where people are getting their pets. Of course, they have lots of options. When they're looking to add a pet to their family, you can go to a local breeder, you can go to a pet store, you can even order a pet online. And as long as the pet industry continues to turn them out and people keep buying them, we're going to keep having a problem over there, right? Meanwhile, we've got 3 million cats and dogs still losing their lives in shelters every year. So of course, we want people to choose to adopt. Now, thankfully, through all the work that so many of us have done in this room and all of you, national adoption rates have absolutely increased. Today, about 30% of the pets that are in homes came from shelters or rescues. The rest are coming from those other sources. There's still a really large pool of people that we can reach with adoption. In fact, there are 17 million of them. And you heard this stat mentioned a little bit before at the welcome session and probably in some other sessions, but through the Shelter Pet Project, the market research we've done is showing that there are 17 million people who are planning to add a pet to their family in the next year who haven't decided yet where they're going to get that pet. And we really just need 20% of them to choose to adopt which equals about 3 million of them, in order to stop euthanizing healthy and treatable pets. But we've also learned through our market research that there's a couple of things causing them to hesitate on that decision about whether they're going to go to the pet store or the breeder or the shelter. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what those things are. There's one concern about what are the pets like? Did they do something that caused them to end up in the shelter, a behavior issue or something else? And the other reason is, will it, for one, be depressing, maybe going to the shelter, but also what is that process going to be like? Will there be a lot of screening? Will it be difficult? And I'd like to use a story to illustrate where some of that perception may be coming from. I live on a pretty rural road. I only know maybe about 5 of my neighbors. I know them pretty well. They're wonderful people. But of them, 2 in the last year or so tried to adopt. And both told me, what the heck is up? They had trouble adopting. And Eden's family, one of my neighbors, they did all the right things. She wanted to adopt because she wanted to save a life, so she goes online and she looks for pets who are available for adoption, and she finds a couple available. She fills out the online adoption application for the rescue that had the couple of dogs she was interested in. They told her they would be at a local event where she could come meet them, so she brought her family down, and they interacted with them and chose one that they thought would be a really good fit for their family. But they weren't allowed to take the dog home that day. The rescue asked them to do a phone interview, so Eden said, okay, I get it, we want to make sure it goes to a good home, no problem. And then they wanted to do a home visit. She's like, okay, I get it, I'll do the home visit. And then several days go by. She thought the home visit went very well, actually, and nothing. Almost a week goes by, and Eden's wondering what's going on. So she contacts the rescue and was like, because she was the top of the list for this particular dog. And she couldn't find anything out. Finally, she gets this email. Thank you for your interest in XYZ Rescue. I obviously changed the name. I don't think there's an XYZ Rescue. We are sorry we cannot place a dog in your home at this time. Okay, so Eden was a little confused, so she tried contacting the rescue, email, phone, could not get an answer. She never heard from that rescue again. Of course, thankfully, she wanted to adopt. She was committed to adopting. She ended up going to the local animal control, and she adopted Indy. And this is Indy about a year later with her children on the couch. Indy's very spoiled, I can tell you from firsthand experience. But she was quick to tell me that, in talking to her friends and her colleagues, they also had similarly difficult experiences, and they were all kind of griping about it. So with that kind of word of mouth, you can see maybe where some of that hesitation might come from. I'd also like to tell you about Mary. Now, Mary's not my neighbor. This is a different community. But Mary was a great adoption candidate. She's conscientious, compassionate, and she also wanted to do the right thing. She wanted to adopt and save a life. Mary went to 3 shelters in her community to adopt, and she was denied by every one of them. So what did Mary do? She saved up her limited money. She was a lower income individual. And she went down to the local pet store and she purchased 2 dogs, a male and a female. And Mary happens to live in an area that's served by Pets for Life, which is a program of the HSUS that reaches out to underserved areas. And when they engaged Mary and met her to talk to her about spaying and neutering her dogs, she was really, really hesitant. And I want to quote Mary because she said she loves dogs so much. And she said, since it was so difficult for me to get a dog, I plan to breed these 2, so I'm sure I will always be able to have dogs. Unfortunately, if you look online, this isn't an isolated incident. We hear a lot of chatter about it's easier to adopt a child maybe than a pet, which we all hate to hear. But I want to kind of pose a question for all of us to consider, and that is, are we making it hard for people to do the right thing?
This video is about the Pets for Life program and reaching underserved communities. There are going to be several sessions about that from All About Animals and Dog Aid, and I believe there's another. So I'm going to save that. I'm happy to share it with anybody who wants to see it, but what we want to talk about was that first half. So it's going to give me problems. So I want to know what you think, and I think we should have an open discussion. Did anybody have a light bulb moment? Was there a point in there where it kind of struck you and went, that does kind of hit home a little bit? Did anybody think of ways that maybe you can consider doing something different? Maybe there's a spot where we can be a little more open than we have been in the past. I'm gonna try and pass this around so that everybody can hear.
I've been to the No Kill Conference. This is my third, and I'm a board member to Last Day Dog Rescue. And I have to tell you, trying to get those changes implemented from the board level to the home visit level to the adoption level to the fosters, very difficult.
So one of the things we can do is I'll give you that video and you can ask them to watch it. When I came back from Expo, it's the first thing I did. I asked all of our adoption volunteers to please watch it. Just like everybody else, when I started my rescue, I based it off of what I thought I had seen work in other areas, and I created an adoption application. I mean, everybody's got an adoption application, right? How long is yours? Is it more than a page? 2 pages? So I went online and printed ours out, and it's 6 pages, 2-sided. It's 12 pages. And when we started, it wasn't nearly this long. But it was like, boy, we're getting a lot of animals returned. I'm going to add a question about, can you think of any reason you'd ever return an animal? And so if they answered it, well, yes, if we had a baby, we'd return an animal. Not going any further with that one. Next. Rather than having a conversation. And that was my biggest takeaway from this presentation, was the checklist of right and wrong answers are costing animals homes. So what can we do to create a more open-ended questionnaire process to have a conversation? Kind of like what they illustrated in the beginning. Without asking those additional questions, we wouldn't have found out that Betsy refers to her outdoor feral cat colony as her outdoor cats, or that Emily doesn't believe she should pay for training because she is one of the best trainers in the country. Without asking those additional questions or having a conversation, I'd never know that. And I look back and think of maybe how many animals we've cost homes, or that I could have moved quicker to make room for more coming in from shelters because we had such a hard-line process. And there are some very difficult ideas in here. I mean, even though we're moving more toward an open conversation type of adoption process, I got a really hard time with declawing. I'm having a really hard time with the whole outdoor dog idea. They're advocating no policies, open-ended, open conversations. I'm having a hard time getting rid of those 2 policies. But we're making steps and we're making strides to try and figure out what we can do differently to find more animals' homes quicker. Because when we do make them wait, it backs up the whole line, right? One of the reasons we encourage rescues to pull from shelters is because you have the opportunity to save 2 lives instead of 1. The animal you're pulling out and the space you're making for the next one coming in. And so when it comes to a board that we're not going there, maybe they just need to hear it in a different way. Maybe they just need to have it illustrated or a use of different words to kind of open their minds. And we're not saying necessarily, tomorrow throw away your application and your contract and it's just a free-for-all, come get an animal. But maybe there's a step in the right direction. Maybe there's just something we can do differently that opens it up. I know a lot of rescues that do background checks, landlord checks, home checks, vet checks, and those are time consuming. It takes a lot of time. Anybody in here ever had an animal returned, adopted it out, thought it was a great home? You already have your application, you do your screening, you do your home check, vet check, landlord check, possible background check, but they still return the animal. So it's not always working anyway. So maybe there's something we can do differently. I thought their point about being a resource is a great one. If I use my checklist of right and wrong answers and I just turn them away, we no longer have a relationship. And as we all know, if they go to a pet store and buy one, they don't have a relationship with them either. They don't have a go-to if they have a problem or a medical concern. Whereas if we develop a relationship with them and we have this conversation and we let them know, we are your go-to people if you have a problem, we're probably more likely to be able to help them before that problem reaches the point of, I'm done, I want to return it, or I'm just going to turn it into a shelter. So I guess that would be my answer to when you do hit that wall of people who go, oh, no. Show them this video. Have a conversation about it. Ask your other volunteers to watch it, and what do you think? Have a group conversation about it. Maybe somebody can think of something that takes a barrier away. Because if you learn anything from the No Kill Advocacy Center and Nathan Winograd's points, there should be no barriers to animals finding homes. Granted, we want them to be perfect homes, and we all know how many of those there are out there. But I think we can still do our due diligence, but remove some of the barriers that perhaps we put in the way of moving animals into homes faster and being able to save lives. Who else had a light bulb moment or a thought or something you want to discuss or something you're concerned about? No. Here, Yeah, if you guys you want to comment, come on up. We'll create a line and we'll talk.
Okay, I've been doing animal rescue for since 1997, and coming from the east side of the coast to Michigan, a lot of, I'm going to say, a lot of backwood thinking. They have this implemented 97, you know. So when I came here and started my own rescue, I went from rescue to rescue to rescue because I couldn't find what I was looking for. Started my own rescue, founder of the West Michigan Spay Neuter Clinic, because I was told repeatedly I couldn't do it. But the groups that will not conform, they want the old stuff. You know, I did background checks. I did all this stuff. Well, I adopted out to 2 doctors, and I got 2 abused cats back. Their references were golden. Michael Vick's, references were golden, and look what he did. We do extensive phone call conversations. You let them talk, and eventually stuff will come out, and it's going to be a yes or a no from there. But the shelters on the West Coast, the West Michigan, Muskegon, their thinking is so not this, not what we're discussing now. And they immediately form an opinion. I don't know if anybody's heard about me. I've had petitions started against me. I've had hate groups. I've had shelters because I do same-day adoptions. Well, I don't just go, hey, Bill, this cat's going home with you. That's not how it works. We've already talked in advance. We've already, discussed all these animals with the people and what they want, what they're looking for. And yeah, we do same-day adoptions. If it doesn't work out, that animal comes back to us. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's their safety net. If it doesn't work out for them and they want to try something else, I am totally willing to do that. I want them to find the best fit. If it doesn't work out for them or the animal, it's not working out for us. And the rescues and the shelters, they just don't have that way of thinking. They just, I'm a bad person and I'm flipping animals, and that's not the case. I have 7 vets. I have been turned down by Harbor Humane Society for adopting a cat. I have 6 cats of my own. They all have medical issues, and I have like 7 vets. Why I was turned down, I'm not sure. I didn't even ask. I just wanted to prove a point. We were going to totally take the cat, but it just never worked out, and they never gave us a reason. So I don't know. I just think that the more research you do with an individual, like our fosters, there's certain fosters that are allowed to do adoptions. They know more about that animal, their quirks, their likes, their dislikes, that they can actually fit with somebody that I send them, and they'll call me and say, no, it wasn't a good fit. So we're allowing a lot of our volunteers and fosters to make those decisions as a group. Make sense? Yep. Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to say I've been with Last Day Dog Rescue for a couple of years, and our volunteers and our fosters has blown up in the last couple of years too, and we use so many of our resources to do that checklist, to throw these events for the applications that we receive that sometimes don't go anywhere, or if we do any phone interviews, we don't really do that. But the home visits, we're all over Michigan, and the begging and the pleading for somebody to go and just please do this home visit so we can just move on, and then have that potential adopter come out to you, and then they can do a meet and greet, and then we can possibly do an adoption from there. And don't forget to do the vet check. And we're using so many of our volunteers and to get so many of these jobs completed before the adopter is even allowed to be approved to adopt. So I think this was definitely a light bulb for me, because if anybody were to take the white glove test to me right now, I don't know if I'd be approved, even though I just did adopt my foster officially this past Saturday. So she adopted us, actually. But I think that this is a really good thing to think about some more.
And like you said, all those resources used up while you're trying to go through your checklist, animals sit and wait. And the ones in the shelters, most shelters, don't have a lot of time. So are we doing the right thing by the animal? are we making it too hard for people who are trying to do the right thing? She talked about 30% are adopting from rescues and shelters. It's actually a high number for us, but for really Joe Public, they think that's pretty low. 70% are coming from Found It or a breeder or a pet store. And I think the numbers are really telling too. 17 million homes are going to get a pet. We only need 2 to 3 million to adopt, and we're not killing healthy, treatable animals. I think I would be denied adoption if I applied at pretty much any rescue I know because I'm over my limit. And I'm betting that applies to a lot of people in this room. If we were truly honest on an application with another group, I'm betting we'd be denied more often than we would be approved. When I first moved out to Denver and I was going to graduate school, I wanted a dog so bad. I missed our family dog, and I just wanted a dog so bad. And I started working at the shelter, and on day 2, I was like, okay, I'm going down to pick out my dog. And they said, well, you have to wait 30 days. I'm not waiting 30 days. I said, I'll go to a different shelter. And so they gave me a pass and said, okay, go ahead and you can pick out your dog. Well, I was just getting ready to move, and so I knew that was going to be a problem. And we were renting a house at the time, and I just told them we own the house. I said, yeah, I have a house. It's got a yard. It's got everything. Can I have my dog? Meanwhile, had I been honest, they'd have called and they'd have found out that, no, we're just renters and they're actually in the process of moving, and they wouldn't have let me have my dog. So that's us. Just like she said, we're the experts. We're the ones who've been doing this forever. It's our passion. It's in our blood. So I don't think there's much of a difference between us and them. I think a lot of people love animals, and I think it's up to us to educate them and really show them the proper way to care. But that checklist of right and wrong answers, we've just got to get away from it. I think it costs good animals good homes.